Are you a thoughtful leader? Maybe you are. Maybe you think you are. Let's find out. I'm Mindy Gibbins-Klein. I'm author of The Thoughtful Leader and host of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. Thoughtful leadership is all about thought leadership that goes above and beyond. Thought leadership that is truly new and original, exciting, disruptive, maybe even groundbreaking. Because let's face it, we need to raise the bar. My guests and I are absolutely obsessed with finding truly original thought leadership, and I'm going to bring you so many exciting ideas and opportunities, things for you to think about, and chances for you to push your thinking that you'll be very glad you tuned in. So thanks so much for checking out Thoughtful Leadership and the Thoughtful Leader podcast. I look forward to connecting with you very, very soon. Welcome to the show. My guest today is the amazing thoughtful leader, Bob Eckert. Now, Bob and I have had some fun conversations about thought leadership and thoughtful leadership, and I just knew he had to be on the show. He works in the area of innovation. I say work, it's really like play, isn't it, Bob?
It is. Somewhere I saw the quote, "A master in the art of living makes no distinction between their work and their play. To them, they always seem to be doing both."
Great stuff. And we hear very often, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And, this is really great that you're bringing this energy to what you do and to the market in general. So people can read the bio, they can read the show notes, but how would you like to describe the work that you do?
Well, my primary motivation is to help people be where they want to be in their life, healthy, physically, mentally, emotionally, and socially, and spiritually. And so to do that, you have to help them solve the problems that get in the way of that complete fulfillment. So throughout my life, I've worked real hard to figure out what are the best methods to help people do that? And I've fell into the creativity space 35 years or so ago now. And in the work that I do helping large organizations improve whatever it is they need to improve, I'm also then helping the individuals who are doing that work to become more skilled at improving themselves on a steady basis.
Yeah, I've been involved in the personal development space for a long time, as you know, and I'm always surprised when people don't have much experience with it, don't go on courses, don't read the books, and they don't even know what's possible. Give us a percentage. I'm putting you on the spot here. How much potential, creative potential, you think the average person is using in their daily life?
Oh my goodness, a numeric value. That's fascinating. I'm a research-based person, so everything I say is based in the research, and you're asking me to conjecture because there is no research about this. But I would say that, let's throw a number out there. Anyone can improve a significant percentage, even those who feel that they are innovation or creative powerhouses. So let's throw a number out there and say, Bob Eckert, as long as I've been doing this, I think I'm only operating at 60% of my creative capacity.
Wow. Okay. I did ask about the average person, and you're definitely not average. You're well above average. But, you have been doing this a long time. So this is really funny because I end up talking about this with clients. Even where we have the need or the desire, or we feel compelled to get the evidence, to make evidence-based statements, we can also bring in our intuition and our insights that come from, in many cases, extensive experience like yours. So yes, it's more qualitative than quantitative, but the thoughtful leader actually does go out on a limb sometimes. So thank you for doing that for us.
Sure.
With us, I should say. And the listeners who love this show, they love the diversity of guests, and they also love the fact that every topic does come back to being thoughtful and thoughtful leadership, because that's our passion. So what does thoughtful leadership mean to you?
Well, most of the time I see leadership through the lens of wanting to impact others and be a servant leader so that they can pull forward their best. And so for me, being a thoughtful leader is one who is constantly looking for ways to improve their craft. Now, some aspect of that is just general leadership skills, but of course, other aspects of that have to do with the milieu in which you are leading. The way that I lead a young forestry major who works for me on my tree farm and maple syrup operation, as he is learning, is going to be a little different than the way I might lead a group of senior executives in a strategic planning retreat. So in every case, though, there's always this intention as a leader to approach it with my own humility and my own curiosity arising from that, and constantly, I'd say, living in the question of how might I serve this person best so that they can do what they wish to do. Forestry major wants to get great at working on a tree farm. Senior executive wants to get great at leading their organization forward on whatever it is they do. So I have to stay humble and curious in the doing of that work.
That's so great. And I'm really happy that you mentioned the tree farm, because I was going to draw that out of you. You know, we all have lots of interests. Well, not all, but many people have different things they're doing and even different businesses. But, you know, we'll have you talk about that in a moment. And so the thoughtful aspect, these qualities of being humble and curious, we've noticed that in these challenging times, and these are other people's words, not only mine, people feel more stressed, and you know they really are concerned about all the uncertainty, and it's harder, they're saying, to do all of those things, to you know, be humble, be patient, be thoughtful, listen to others, step back. There's almost this pent up angst and a feeling that they need to overcompensate with other qualities. And what have you seen when you work with clients? In
terms of this current stress that we're living under? Help me understand a little.
Yeah, the ability to go into that thoughtful space, to prioritize thoughtful leadership and creativity and all the, oh gosh, I'm going to call them nice to haves. We know they're not. But according to some of our clients, it's like, yeah, but the bottom line is screaming at me right now.
Yeah. So there's this dynamic that I think we all experience every day in every waking moment. And that dynamic is the mental clutter or cacophony of thought that we have. And where we choose to spend more of our thinking time, how much headspace we give over to particular thought patterns and thought forms, is really important. And as a human being, we have this innate capacity to watch our thinking from a distance. We call that metacognition. And then, to a certain degree, be able to choose of the thoughts that are available to us, which thoughts serve us in that particular moment, and put more energy in that direction. Now, it's a capacity, but it's not something that everyone does all of the time. And in as much as it's a capacity, we have to practice if we want to get better at that. So the fascinating thing working in the innovation space is that a key skill set, if you will, is to separate what we call divergent thinking from convergent thinking, or ideation from choosing. And in order to do that, I have to, on the front end, the ideation or the divergent side, choose to defer judgment, not judge. I hate it when people say, there's no bad ideas in a brainstorm, or think, yes, there are. And we seek those ideas on purpose, because we never know when a bad idea will be the spark for something great going forward. And so to do that, I must set aside judgmental thoughts, and I'll use them later. It's good to remember, we're saying defer judgment. not judge. Not judging is a dangerous thing. That's a way to get yourself dead. So, but I defer that. So the same thing happens in times like this that we might say are perhaps a little bit more stressful with the pandemic and the business challenges in and around it and all of that. And so I have to practice the skill of putting my thought energy in a direction that serves me. And that is the necessary skill for doing any creative work, and also the necessary skill for managing frustration and anger and all the things that we would say are unpleasant emotions that we may wish to move in a different direction.
And managing challenges, managing our business, managing relationships, and managing life. And yet, some people do try to run away or ignore it or just attack it with force and bulldoze their way through, but not our listeners. So listeners, I just want to take a moment and remind you how much we value you. We love you. We're so grateful for all your support, and including my guests when I say this, that we can't do this without you. There's no point doing a podcast if nobody listens. You're just shouting into the wind. So if you're listening to us now, know that we really, really appreciate you. And I appreciate my guests. And coming back to Bob and his very interesting, divergent career. See what I did there? You've chosen to do two pretty different things. So tell us how you hit on that idea of living and working where there's a tree farm and the maple syrup business and still maintaining the corporate stuff.
We oftentimes hear that we have to have work-life balance, right? But, it's not just a cute statement. The master in the art of living makes no distinction between their work and their play. To them, they're always doing both. For me, it's not just a cute statement. It really is the way I choose to live my life. So there's three businesses here. Adirondack Adventure Base, which is a glamping, camping, treehouse, lean-to, campsite, chalet kind of thing, and then the tree farm, and then new and improved, the work I do with innovation. Some are more lucrative than others, but new and improved is really all about the mind and the head and groups and that kind of thing. And tree farm and Adirondack Adventure Base are all about the body and the earth and the environment. And so for me, I guess I'm polymathic. And I've always been interested in that kind of thing. I used to think that it was a problem and I would flit from one thing to another. My younger brother once said to me when I was moving into the creativity field 35 years ago, after having been an outward bound instructor and ran drug abuse programs and led retreats all around North America, he said, "When are you going to stop having these fad jobs?" And I said, "John," he's a career academic, and I said, "John, I'm still doing the same job I've always done. I'm working to facilitate great change for the health of humanity in a balanced and appropriate way." So all of these things are necessary because I have to take care of myself. I have to follow my own bliss. I need to explore things that I haven't, learned. And I love working with physical things to manifest something new as much as I love working in the ethereal space of human cognition to help manifest something new. And truthfully, in the space of human cognition, the reward is a slower cycle. You don't see it. So sometimes what I need to do is I need to go work with a piece of wood because that piece of wood is, it shapes itself into something that my mind and it together create. I can see it. It's tangible. It's real. And it's relatively quick. It's not as, when you build a house, that's slower. But when you do some interesting woodwork, it's quicker. And so I think for me, it's a matter of balance. It keeps my body physically fit and feeds my brain in unique ways that I would not get fed if I was just being, I don't know, I'll play the stereotype, but the consultant who just works with clients, sits at his desk marketing new things and reads books. Which is a part of my life too. So.
Oh, Oh, gosh. So I'm thinking about the fact that you said to defer judgment, and you must have come to this conclusion after reflecting on not just what your brother said, but your whole career and the career that's always changing. We get a lot of polymaths, a lot of what we call Renaissance men or Renaissance men on the show.
Women as well.
And women, sorry. But yes. How could I forget my own gender, much less every other gender? The thing is, to reflect on that and come up with that kind of conclusion or judgment and, be happy with that life. I think that's what a lot of people would like to do. I think there's a lot of people who just need to stop and do that reflection and figure out what aspect of themselves is not feeling fulfilled. Especially people who, if you work for yourself, listeners, if you have your own business or businesses, you can pretty much shape and craft your career and your life however you want. Bob's done his things his way. I've got my 3 businesses that I'm always playing with and merging sometimes, keeping separate other times. You've got a lot of choice in the matter. So, this is a reminder from us that you can bring creativity to everything you're doing, including the path of your career. So speaking of that, Bob, what is the most challenging thing that you have dealt with in your career, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I would say the most challenging thing is to remain tenacious in a great desire to have a big impact. And so have I had the impact I wish to have? Have I overcome the feeling of lack of impact? No. And do I think I ever will? Probably not. So then the challenge is to continue to fight the good fight and true, in the midst of times you lose traction. I remember a Native American friend of mine one time said, Bob, in life, you go around the medicine wheel. And at a certain point, as you continually cycle around the medicine wheel, you will feel a loss of power. It will come back, and you need to be patient and reflective in those times when you're having low impact. So it's an interesting perspective, and it was fortuitous at the time because I was in one of those cycles of low impact, which is frustrating to me. So any mental story that works for any individual to help them to stay tenacious with what it is they have a desire to do with a full understanding, and I think in a mature understanding, and we can all invite that to ourselves, that there will be times where you lose the ability to have the impact that you want. Learn, be reflective, and accept that that's a temporary condition and it will pass, especially if you are reflective during that time. So if you're humble and curious, new information will be coming to you that will help you to move past that period of lower impact, lower success, lower quality of relationship. You stay humble and curious, you'll find a pathway. It's what we do. The species is creators. We are creators. And so with the right feed into our being, we will find pathways that we have not found before, sometimes just for ourselves and sometimes for everyone if we have the right connections of thought at a particular time. Low impact maybe on yourself, but certainly important. Big impact on the world. In South Africa, as a concrete example, when apartheid was coming to a close, the leadership there was being facilitated in a creative problem-solving process, and they had no idea how they were going to keep people from, still killing each other after apartheid ended. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was the solution, saying all you have to do is fully apologize publicly for the terrible things you've done, and you will be forgiven and not prosecuted. That's crazy thinking. And it worked. And that had a big impact. But that impact couldn't have occurred unless the individuals doing that work, Tutu, de Klerk, Mandela, and the people around them, were deferring judgment about the various ideas they were kicking around. And that took personal control. So it's all interrelated.
It is. And I'm going to do a bit of hot seat coaching, because I know you're open to it and you know my style. But I would challenge you on just one thing you've said so far today. And when you were talking about impact and having a feeling that you weren't making enough impact, or in one breath, you described it as a feeling that you weren't making enough of an impact. Then I heard you say that you weren't. And so I know it was just a throwaway phrase. It's still your perception. And that brings me, if I were to be thoughtful about it and encourage you to be thoughtful about it, to ask, how do you know what impact you're making? Because many people whose lives you touch in your work, in your writing, in this interview, they won't get in touch and tell you. So I know this is another big question, and this will be our last big question for this session. That what would you say to the listeners about knowing and getting a feel for the impact, so that we don't beat ourselves up?
Well, there's this idea that really is, and thanks for that, because I think that's an interesting way to think about it. There's this idea that came to me one time in my thought forms, where a person asked me, I was training folks, and when I was at Narcotic and Drug Research, training drug abuse counselors. And, I was talking about, as a therapist, constantly working on improving my craft at that time. And she says, don't you ever get tired of working on yourself? And it was so foreign to me to think about that way. And what came out of my mouth, whether it was my thoughts or came from somewhere else, I do not know, because I do not think I was wise enough to know this myself at that moment. But it came out of my mouth. And I said, there's no such thing as a grown-up. There are just growing ups and stuck people. That's it. So when I fully embrace that for myself, I can accept that at times I will feel stuck. And that is okay, because I will never be finished. And in as much as I will never be finished, when I notice that, I have a feeling, let's say, that I'm not having the impact that I want to have, I can accept that and keep moving. I don't expect perfection from myself. So there's a lower burden here. There are times, I don't know if I've ever met anybody this way. I had a conversation with the Dalai Lama one time, pretty evolved man, and he was frustrated with himself about something that he was not doing as well as he wished he could. Frustrated enough to come to tears as he described this to me. Well, there's an insight. Even someone who's done as much work on himself as had he, by that point that he and I were having lunch together, he was frustrated with himself. So this happens, and I can deny it and say, I shouldn't be frustrated with myself. But you know what? I am in that moment. So I accept that, move through it instead of recoiling from it. The recoiling from it is how we stay stuck. But when we move through it by saying, right now, I don't feel like having the impact I want to be having. Move through it instead of saying, I will just affirm myself. I have impact on the world. There's a part of my brain that the BS indicator goes off and says, no, you don't. So not right now, you don't. And so I can't get through it by just pretending it's not there with some new age affirmation. I have to say, right now, I'm not feeling a lot of impact. So I'm going to do something a little different for a while. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go mountain bike. I'm going to do some carpentry. I'm going to write a new article. I'm going to do some journaling. I'm going to meditate. I'll do something different. And that allows me to move past the stuckness by going through it rather than recoiling from it.
Well, your insights over the past few minutes have certainly created impact, and you'll never know exactly where or whom or anything else, and that's part of it. That's just to keep moving through it. That's really powerful. I appreciate it very much. And I think you have shown us, the listeners, that, staying humble and curious means that you're never going to say, oh, I'm making such a big impact. That's just your nature. And that's, you always do want to give more and be more. And for that, I thank you. Thanks, Bob, for being on the show. And thanks for sharing so generously with everyone.
Glad to do it. Thanks for having me on, Mindy.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Thoughtful Leader. And I hope it's inspired you to be more thoughtful as a leader in your business. Please consider subscribing and leaving a review. An important question for you. Do you want to create a culture of thought leadership in your organization? My best-selling book, The Thoughtful Leader, is available now on Amazon and many other sites in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. Please visit www.mindygk.com for more great content. That's www.mindygk.com. Speak to you again soon.